again, a philosopher, the mind is your area of expertise. And as far as most people are concerned, Richard, exploring the intellect, the imagination, the soul even is what philosophers are for. And minds by themselves, you assert nevertheless, are useless. And you write about our underlying carnal intelligence. And where are you bringing us with that phrase, carnal intelligence?
Well, it's back to touch, obviously, and it rises in the touch book. And what I'm really getting at is the notion of an intelligence that we all share, that's universal, that you have before you ever go to university, right? It's kind of a hedge school intelligence, if you will. It's a natural intelligence. And it comes out in vernacular terms, colloquial terms like savvy, or tact, or flair, or insight, right? That these are words which for me are modes of intelligent experience of the world, right? I mean, it's very interesting, for instance, that the origin of the word for wisdom in Greek, sapientia, comes from sapere, to taste, savourer, savoir, right? To have savvy, our word savvy. We all know what that means. We say, oh, look, so-and-so has savvy. Yeah. We know that they're the ones you want to follow when you're in trouble in a dark night, not the person with the PhD. Now, the person with the PhD or the professorship is simply extrapolating from that and explicitating what is already there in that kind of native savvy. And the same with scent. Flair, I mean, it's not an accident that we say that somebody has flair, that they have that way of knowing. Or, you know, as Heaney says around sight, you know, insight is seeing things. We have an eye that can not just see things, but see into the heart of things. And Cézanne has a beautiful line when he's painting Le Mont Saint-Victoire, the trees, the forest on Le Mont Saint-Victoire down the south of France, Provence. And he says, you know, when I was painting those trees, he said, I had this distinct experience, not just of painting the trees, but of the trees painting themselves through me. I was seeing the trees, but the trees used to see me. And it reminded me of when we used to drive to the sea, Garrettstown or whatever, Crosshaven with my mother when we were little, and we'd be in the back of the car, all 7 children, you know, scrambling around, and we'd sing. She'd teach us, you know, we see the sea. No, I see the sea and the sea sees me. And that's insight. It's when you don't, it's not just you unilaterally seeing the sea, but it's the sea seeing you and seeing itself through you. And that's really what I'm trying to get at in the touch book. Because as Aristotle says, and contemporary phenomenology also, I won't get into too big words here, but it's a double sensation. Touch is a double sensation. And it can work, and Aristotle reminds us of this, in all of the senses, the synesthesia. So that what I call tactful, you know, tact is refined touch, is good touch. There's good touch and bad touch. We can come to that maybe later, but good touch, gentle touch, healing touch, enabling touch, loving touch, caring touch is tact or tactful. Think of our ways of touching other people, tactful. And therefore tactful sight is insight of vision with the eye of the heart, so to speak. Tactful scent is flair. You've written this on this yourself and your wonderful essay on snout. And tactful hearing is resonance. So a touch, the tact can actually work through all of the senses in terms not just of a unilateral imposition of our senses on things, but a receptive, attentive attitude to things. And that's the double reciprocal mutual sensation that I'm trying to get at in touch, which sometimes can be lost in the digital world, which for all its advantages sets us up as sort of masters of the universe through our digital screens. Interestingly, touch screens, but once you touch them, you exit from your own incarnate embodied existence. You exit double sensation because now you are seeing things and people and events and experiences, but you're not being seen, you're not being scented, you're not being heard. And that gives us a certain sense of power, which means that even though we are digitally interconnected now more than ever, not just locally, but globally, even in this very experience now with you and Mike and so on, we are actually isolated, each one in our room. And it's extraordinary how contemporary statistics in terms of pathology and depression have noted that the millennial and the Z generation suffer more from loneliness than any other generation. And it is very linked with their hyperconnectivity, leads ironically and paradoxically to this sense also of disconnection. And that's one of the, one of the questions philosophically: how do we reconcile the digital, which of course is no going back, and we wouldn't want to go back. Look at the huge advantages. And yet there's something lost in translation.
It overcomes, I think you said, distance, but it doesn't overcome the absence of closeness.
Exactly. That's actually a phrase from Heidegger, that technology overcomes distance, but it doesn't bring nearness. It doesn't bring nearness. And that's, in a way, what we've lacked. And the pandemic has brought that out very much. The fact that, as Joni Mitchell says, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And in the yellow taxi. And that's true. We realized how important touch was when we lost it, and how often we hugged each other, how often we shook hands. So every time we turned a doorknob, 20 people had touched that doorknob. Now we can no longer take that for granted. And I see that ironically as maybe a wake-up call to remind us how important the digital is, the tactile is. And then the question is, how do we combine the digital and the tactile?